Hi guys, so this is the roster that I compiled for the March camp and for the March friendlies against Ecuador and Chile. I made this in the way that I think Coach Greg Berhalter is going to compose it. I'll go over each of the selections individually by position. So I think Berhalter is going to go with Zach Steffen, 2018 Men's National Team Player of the Year. Played, for what he was given in the two friendlies in January, played pretty well. He needs to keep making performances for the men's national team to get that English work permit when he goes over to Manchester City. Very good player. Same thing with Ethan Horvath in terms of being a good player. Playing goalie right now for Club Brugge over in Belgium. He was really exceptional in the Champions League, and that kind of worked over a little into Europa League. He actually didn't have the best of games midweek, but they still ended up winning. I don't think you can't say that Steffen and Horvath aren't the two best goalkeepers right now for the men's national team. The third one that I think a lot of people would argue is Brad Guzan, who plays for Atlanta. I actually have Sean Johnson here. I think Sean Johnson, in terms of a talent, is just as good as Guzan. I think Johnson offers a little more in terms of distribution. I don't know. This was just a gut call. I think Johnson is going to make it over. Center backs, you got to start with John Brooks playing over in Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga, who are playing really well. I think they're sitting fifth as I make this video right now. He's been a pretty great part of that as well. He's a really immense passer, probably the best passer on the back line that we have. Aaron Lawn, MLS Defender of the Year from last year, played really well in the friendlies. Same thing with Walker Zimmerman. He played pretty exceptional in the friendlies, got a goal out of it. I went with 5 center backs, mainly because I couldn't really distinguish if we were going to bring Zimmerman or Miazga or Carter Vickers, so I just ended up bringing all 3 of them. Carter Vickers has kind of been thrust into a starting role with Swansea over in the championship because of injury. He's played relatively good to even, pretty good. And Miazga, who had that really terrible stint with Nantes over at Reading, trying to drag them out of the relegation zone. I think all 5 of these guys are very talented. And I think Berhalter, this is a position group that needs some weeding out. And I think this is a good camp to do it. The big question then comes in at right back. I think the big question, specifically is DeAndre Yedlin. What do you do with DeAndre Yedlin? He's a Premier League right back, probably considered, a few months ago, one of our better players. And now a lot of people are calling for his head for him not to start. I think you have to work him into the lineup. I think he's too good of a player to be worked out of it pretty, as easily as some people are making it out as he will be, because Nick Lima did play so well in the January friendlies, and he crafted his own kind of position where he would fold in right next to the 6, while the 5 up top pressed forward. I don't know if Yedlin is capable of doing that, but you have to work in your best players if you're Berhalter. Or maybe you don't. Maybe he is that tactician that he's been touted to be, and Yedlin doesn't see the field, and we see Nick Lima. Regardless, I think we see both of them in the camp. And I mean, maybe Reggie Cannon, but he didn't even see the field in January. I think these are your 2 right backs for your. I have at the left back position 3 center backs. I have Vincenzo Alvarado playing down in Liga MX, Eric Palmer Brown playing in the Netherlands, and Tim Ream playing for Fulham right now. I think what you could see done is, because there is so little in ways of talent, experience, game time at left back for any United States player as it is, I think you could see a center back, not of the caliber of the 5 that are being brought in to actually play center back, but another one from that pool being brought in to play left back. I think the more reasonable thing, the more likely thing that we'll see is either of Jorge Villafana of Portland or Anthony Robinson of Wigan on loan from Everton, kind of guys that can press forward into the attack and be dangerous. One of those guys with Daniel Lovitz, who we saw in January, he wasn't exceptional, but he fit the role that Greg Berhalter had with Nick Lima kind of folding in that entire kind of rotation shift. I don't know if we'll see that in camp, and I think it'll be indicative as to what left backs he picks, as to whether or not we're going to see that same tactic again. On the same note, with Lima. If we don't see Lima, then we know exactly why. We know he's just, that was just something that was for January, although I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that was a tactic that we're going to see brought back again and again. It's an entire mess, the left back pool as it is. we really didn't need this entire question of tactics to kind of, thicken the mess even further. Let's cover the entire center back pool. We have two guys that for sure are, if they're brought into camp, are going to be playing the six. That's Michael Bradley and Will Trapp. I think both these guys people have their gripes with. They both have their moments from time to time, but both of them at various points, either throughout their career or in the last few games that we've seen them, have had hiccups. I'm in favor of bringing Bradley back into the fold as, kind of a guy that we see for the national team a lot. It's going to come with a moment or two where, you're going to kind of hate that he is back, but he does a lot. He does so much, really, for this team. And I think Will Trapp, while not being on the same talent level, is of that same mold. The one thing that I think, if we do see it, should be very kind of not only impressive, but encouraging, is if Tyler Adams is brought in and is immediately thrust in at that sixth position, that means that Berhalter trusts him. I don't think that's going to happen immediately. I think Tyler Adams is more likely to play that Nick Lima right back role than he is to be thrust in immediately at the sixth, but I think he's most likely kind of be brought in as one of these pressing center mids. A position that is built perfectly for Weston McKennie, a guy that can stride forward as well as he can defend and win aerial battles. He's an exceptional player, Weston McKennie, and so is Tyler Adams. It's just a matter of where we see him positionally. Sebastian Lletget is a pure spark plug off the bench. We saw that in January. Dwayne Holmes from Derby County, he's been playing really good for a team that is pushing to get to the Premier League. You can't overlook that if you're the men's national team. Two electric left wingers, I think, are going to be brought into camp. Tim Weah, who's producing with Celtic. Again, the Scottish Premier League is not, the greatest in the world, but he's scoring, he's assisting, he's working hard. He's been, feisty, as we've seen very recently. He's been getting yellow cards and whatnot, or a yellow card. I really love Tim Weah. I think a lot of people are going to love him, especially. I think this could be a camp where Tim Weah kind of puts himself in the conversation with Adams and Pulisic as kind of the real cornerstones of this men's national team. Amon is kind of an electric player. I mentioned that before. Works really well on the ball. Here has some piercing runs. He's got great pace. He hasn't been phenomenal for Nordsjælland recently, and again, he plays for Nordsjælland, which the talent level over in the Scandinavian leagues isn't always great. I just think he's a talent that we saw against Peru, and I want to see him again. Pulisic is the best player that we have on this roster. Electric on ball. If you saw him against Tottenham, you'll understand kind of the immense potential that he has, not only as a player, potentially, and even he's showing it now. He's going to do so well for Chelsea. That's a gut feeling that I have. If we're looking for kind of a guy just as the pure outlet to kind of start the offense, Paul Arriola did that really well in January, especially against Costa Rica. I think he's a no-brainer, I think, from now on, Paul Arriola. I think he's going to be very vital coming off the bench for the men's national team in the future. Striker is kind of messy, and then you have the one real bright star in there with Josh Sargent. I think it's only a matter of time, and it could be Gold Cup when we just see Josh Sargent take the reins of this position, this 9 position, and just run with it. I have Zardes and Wood here. These are guys that are high work rate guys that can help the press that Berhalter wants to implement. I would expect more likely one of these two guys to make it, but I put both of them here to thicken up because I think he wants to, or at least I would want to distinguish between Zardes and Wood and then move forward with just one of those guys from that. And I have Andrija Novakovic, plays for Fortuna Sittard. I think of all these guys that are not listed at left back, I think he's probably the biggest reach to make this roster. I don't think he's going to make this roster, but he's very competent in front of net. Maybe more than competent. He's very composed in front of net, and he makes a lot of things happen. We see that in the Eredivisie. He scores against some of the higher level competitions. His goal against Feyenoord is very impressive. I think that one may have been the assist against Feyenoord. I follow him pretty intently because I like what I see out of him. This is kind of, again, a shot in the dark, but I think if he makes the roster, I think he's going to be impactful. So in terms of guys that are kind of on the cusp of this, there's really two main categories. One of them is just guys that are young and just haven't played first-team football yet. Alex Mendez, who's in Freiburg's academy, Richie Ledesma, who's in PSV's academy, Chris Gloucester, who's in Hanover's academy, plays left back, which is why it's important. Sebastian Soto, who plays in Hanover's, I think, U23 sides right now. Those guys are kind of a step away from, that first cap, but I'm not going to put them over, say a guy like Bobby Wood or a guy like Jonathan Amon at this point, or I guess whoever's at left back in terms of, for Gloucester's case. Those guys, they're going to have their time, and it might be Gold Cup. We might bring one or two of those guys in for Gold Cup. I just don't see it happening for this camp. And then the other pool of players that I think is on the cusp of making this roster but didn't are all the MLS guys that maybe even proved themselves in January. I'm talking specifically about Mihailovic and Jonathan Lewis, guys that proved themselves, even in terms of a men's national team level before they proved themselves at the MLS level. I think those guys need some playing time. And again, that's the same with Mark McKenzie, Austin Trusty, Paxton Pomykal, Chris Durkin. I think we'll see some of those guys develop over the course of the MLS season. Again, there's a lot of them that I didn't even name, Jalen Lindsay, et cetera, et cetera. I think a few of those guys are going to develop, and they're going to start unseating a few of these reserve players. But I think this is a solid roster. I think if you choose only two of the left backs, you end up with a 26-man roster. I think that's pretty healthy for a March camp, and I think we're going to do pretty well. Again, this was what I expect Greg Berhalter to pick in March, and I hope you have a good day.